Hey folks, how's it going? Today I'm gonna rotate the tires on my 2010 Silverado. Because I like to rotate the spare, I wanted to have a full-size spare, so I went and bought one and replaced the factory spare with that. And so I like to rotate the spare as well so that it's worn evenly with the rest of them. So in the manual here, in the where it tells you how to rotate the tires, I just made my own little diagram. And then just for quick reference, I also wrote here that the lug nuts on this truck need to be 140 foot-pounds. So with that, I like to get the spare tire off first because it's kind of a pain, so we'll get that out of the way first. I seem to forget every time how exactly to get this off. This first part's easy, but the next part can be a challenge. So even if you don't go and buy a full-size spare, it's really good to just take it off every once in a while. Check the tire pressure to make sure that all the stuff involved in getting it off isn't rusted solid, so you don't have to deal with that while you're on the side of the road. So all this stuff comes from the factory. It's stored under the back seat. This we gotta put together, and then this guy right here pops open. Oh, and I need the key, of course. It's always something. So it's just the ignition key has to go in there. And take this plug out, and then this guy, pretty sure it's the square end, has to go in there. Yeah, so I can feel that's grabbed onto something. You take so normally, be for your lug wrench, but it's got the square in the end here, so that snaps on, and then you can just loosen it up. Now you probably already saw, now the spare tire is loose in there. Oh, it's gonna, okay, well that's both good and bad, because there's a safety mechanism that makes it so that even if the cable that's holding this right now fails, it still won't fall on the road. That is apparently what was not engaged just now. But that's also the part that's the biggest pain to try to deal with to get this out. So maybe we're ahead. I don't know. That's fun. So I'm just going to keep cranking this down. Crank this down a lot in order to get this to swing out here far enough to work with it. It's got to be kind of loose. Okay, so now if I pick it up, you see this part here. Hopefully you can see that's still on the ground. This has got to get through the tire. So I got to lift this up off the cable and turn it so that it goes through the middle of the wheel. Now it's off. So here's a closer look at that. Yeah, this is the thing that would normally catch on something as it's coming down. And then what you're supposed to do is push up on this. The manual actually says to put your jack under it. And the jack will push this up, which pushes this to the side and releases that safety so that it can drop down. But that is malfunctioned, I guess. It's probably for another day. Okay, so the spare is going to go to the rear driver's side, which is right over here. Now, this being, having not been on the road for a long time, there's not going to be any weirdness. But while I'm rotating the tires, I always like to just do an inspection of the tire. I'm looking for any unusual wear that might indicate a suspension problem. I'm also looking for any nails or anything like that. And then once we get them all rotated, we will adjust the tire pressure, and I'll explain why we do that at the end and not at the beginning. So this is good. I'm sure I inspected this before it got stowed. I have a lift kit on this truck, so the factory jack probably is not gonna work for this, but you don't need a fancy one like this either. If I had to use the factory one, I could always build it up with some blocks or something. It would still work just fine. So first we gotta pop this cap off. That's what the flathead is for. Set that aside, and this is a real handy tray for putting the lug nuts in. And I will use this impact to make things faster, but this does not have the strength to get these nuts off. I don't know why. It certainly should. There seems to be an air leak. Ever since it came out of the box, it's done that. And I've taken it all apart, oiled it, put it back together, and it still does it. I can't really see what the problem is. It's not important enough for me to worry about too much. So anyway, that means we need to just loosen the nuts a little bit before we can use that. So for that, I'm going to use the torque wrench just as a big breaker bar. This is a 19, right? Oh, it's not. Okay, never mind. Must be a 21. What? It's a 22. It's a 22. Man, as many times as I've done this, you'd think I'd remember these little things. But I don't. Okay, just to test. Oh, see here all that air? My other air tools don't do that. It's all coming out right here. It's all between this nut and the other one, which, I mean, that's where it is allowed to swivel. You can't tighten that enough. It's made to... So I don't really know. I don't know. Oh, and I just squirted a bit of oil in this. I don't have an air system where it automatically oils your tools. So you do have to drop a little bit of oil in these air tools every time you use them. And we'll just see quick if this is going to do it. Compressor, the pressure's turned all the way up, so yeah, not going to do it. Should probably be higher yet. I don't know if that's going to break a torque wrench, putting all that pressure on them, but this is what I got. Why would I buy a big torque wrench and a breaker bar? You know? Those in here, so they can't roll away. That slips off. Okay, and these ones are going to the front on the same side. Check this for anything weird. If it wears too much in the middle and not on the sides, that means your tire pressure is too high. If it's more worn on the sides than in the middle, that means the tire pressure is too low. If you see what's called cupping on the side, which is like worn good, worn good, worn good, that can be a sign of something wrong with the suspension, some out of alignment. And I'm not seeing any of that here. So especially in very hot climates, you might get a bulge out the side. Looks like a big bubble. That will certainly blow when it hits a rock just the right way. And you never really see the inside of the tire, so especially here, it's good to check for that. A little bit about tires. Sorry to be kind of long-winded in these videos, but I don't know. I think it's good info, I guess. But if when you look at the tire sizing here, so you see this first number, 285/65 R18. This first number, 285, that's the width of the tire in millimeters. 285. 65 is the ratio of how wide it is to how tall it is off the rim. So it's 65% of 285 is how many millimeters this is tall. So if you get a 285/75, that means it's going to be a taller tire, but the same width. If you get a 365, I don't even know if that's a real size you can get, but that means it's going to be wider and a bit taller as well, because it's going to follow that same ratio. And then R means the rim size, which is 18, is an 18-inch rim. Well, there's a lot more info here too that it's a serial number and like traction ratings, things like that I don't know enough about to say in the video, so I won't. Here we go. While we're in here, it's also good to just check all this stuff. Check the brake lines. This emergency brake line looks a little questionable, actually. But I know the e-brake still works. It's important actually to try your emergency brake every once in a while, because these cables can rust up if they're not worked every now and then. So just make sure that they're there when you need them. If you never use it at all, that can be an issue. Seems fine. I have these wheel adapters on here as well because of the lift kit in the front of the truck. You know, if this is the axle and here's the front tire, as the truck gets lifted and this angle gets more, that brings the front tire in, right? So that it doesn't rub on all of the things that are on the inside of the tire. You have to put a spacer in there to shore it out so that it doesn't rub. So that's necessary in my case for the front tires. And then I did that in the back as well, just to have it all even. These are not spacers. You really don't want to use a spacer, which is just a block. This is called a hub-centric wheel spacer. Technically, it's a wheel adapter if you want to adapt the stock stud pattern to a different one to match some fancy wheels that you got. You'd use a wheel adapter. This one happens to be, you know, it doesn't adapt anything. It's the same stud pattern to the same stud pattern. But what it gives you is this hub, which is important. That is what you need to center the tire on here before you torque it down. If it was just a spacer, you wouldn't have that hub to line up, and then it's very easy for the wheel to get a little bit up or down, and then you're going to get a lot of vibration and problems going down the road. So if you're going to have some kind of something to widen the stance of your vehicle, a hub-centric spacer or adapter is what you want to go with. The metal on this is it's rated, it's fine, but it's a little softer than what comes stock with the vehicle. So in the instructions for these wheel spacers, they tell you not to use an impact gun to tighten them. So I will use it on the lowest setting just to quickly get the lugs sped on there, and then I will torque it with the torque wrench properly. But I got a batch of these that were poorly manufactured, just a bad batch, I guess. I spun them on by hand and then torqued it down to 140 like it said. And these studs actually pulled through this spacer. And I contacted the manufacturer. This is Bora, right? Yeah, Bora. Bora is the manufacturer of these, and sent them back to them, and they sent me a new pair. So I still don't know how that happened. They said they'd never seen anything like that before, but they were good. They stood by their product and replaced them. So enough talking. Let's get this done. Whenever you put a wheel on, you always want to do a star pattern and tighten this. So I'm going to do this first, then go to the opposite side. And come back here, do that one, then go to the opposite side. Then I'll come back and do this one and the opposite side. So always a star pattern when you're tightening this stuff. And again, I'm just putting this on the lowest setting because of those spacers, so I don't do any damage to that. There. And we'll switch over to the torque wrench. It's back to 140. I like to just barely set this on the ground, just so the wheel can't spin while I'm trying to torque it. But I don't want to put a lot of weight on it yet until it's fully torqued. Just that's fine. A little more. All right, so that's all of them. And now, once they're all on, I like to just go back around. And then this time I'll just go in a circle. Just make them each click one more time, just to make sure it didn't settle or anything. Can't get another quarter turn out of it or anything. Good. So that one's good. Pop this back on. I've also heard once you get a tire put back on to drive it a few miles and then come back and retorque, You know, I've done that before, but never have I ever gotten any more of a turn out of a nut after doing that. I think maybe it's partially my method of not putting all the weight on it before I do this, so it can settle properly as I'm torquing it down. But I stopped doing that because I never gain anything. The way these work, these are stock wheels, by the way, stock hub cover and everything. This cover has two little notches right there. See, these ones don't have that. That one does. Those two notches need to surround where the air nozzle is. So that's where that needs to go, and it has to go on pretty even. If it goes on one side versus the other, you won't get it on. But once you get it on there, lined up, now it should just take one hit, and it's back on. All right, moving on. All right, a couple other things I'm going to do while I'm in here. I'm going to grease up these tie rod ends, squirt a couple things of grease in there, and the ball joint here on this control arm. Ooh, that is rusty. Look at that. This is, okay, so this is called a Zerk fitting up here, and that still looks, yeah, that's operable. It's plenty fine, but it's a lot of rust. That's one of my critiques, I think, about this lift kit. Let me talk about that for just a second. This is a rough country lift kit. Rough country does get some slack for being a cheap product as far as how expensive you can go with lift kits. A lot of the things that I've heard that are not good about it, they kind of fixed over the years, which is why I ultimately decided to go with them. This kit, if you buy their cheapest kit, all they're going to do is give you some body spacers, and that's going to be it. This one came with new front shocks, replaced this whole control arm, so it's a little bit better quality than their cheapest package, which I think is where a lot of the reviews come from. Another negative review that, sorry about the sirens, there's another one. Every day. Another negative review that I should have showed you before I put this wheel back on is these blocks back here. These right here that go underneath the leaf springs, this is replaced as well. In the past, they used to have, these were plastic. And this part of the wheel takes a lot of torque from the engine. So having this plastic, I can see why that would have been a big gripe for some people. But in this case, these are now steel. So I think they've corrected a lot of things over time. I don't know why every lift kit also seems to level the truck. A lot there, you can buy just a leveling kit as well. People that drive trucks like to not have it look like the nose is lower than the back, so they just raise the front a little bit so that the whole truck looks level, and they think it makes it look tougher and everything. And yeah, it does, but surely there's a reason why the factory decides that you need a little more clearance in the back than the front. On a truck, I'm sure it's because of load capacity. Because once you put any kind of weight in the back, then you look like you're going uphill constantly, which I think looks worse than just being level. So I don't know why you can't seem to find a lift kit that doesn't also level. I would love to find a kit that maintains the factory ratio from front to back, but I could not find one. And in this case, I did not find out until you know, I think the last page of the instructions, once I received the kit, said, if you have any kind of weight, standard weight on the back of the truck, like a toolbox, for example, full of things, then you're going to want to reach out to them for a bigger spacer block to go back there to compensate for that. So, like, come on, I'm like fully into this project now, and that's when I find out that I need to reach out for another piece. So I had to finish it with what I had and then run with it for a week or so before I got that new part. But you know, after all that, and then I when I'm on the phone with them, I said, well, you know, can I get one that's I don't know, we'll just can I get one that's 6 inches and not 4, so that I can also maintain that factory look? And they said, well, at that point you need different shocks as well, because these shocks here were also part of the lift kit. And so, like, okay, so the shocks that I just bought from you and put on now, those would be useless too. So I opted to just go with the bigger block, the slightly bigger block, to make it level. But that was yep. And now, of course, because they have to put their branded little cap here over the grease fitting for the ball joint, water gets in here and it never escapes, so that keeps rusting. Maybe I'll just leave this off from now on. So I'm going to get those greased up, and then we'll keep going. So I'll give you a little review on this rough country lift kit. Talk for a second about torque, and the reason you use a torque wrench. When you torque down a nut or a bolt or something, what you're actually doing is stretching the bolt. So what you want to do is stretch it to the point where all of the threads are taking an equal amount of pressure. That's why manufacturers have a torque spec on just about every nut and bolt on a vehicle, or it's especially important for the things I do at work, suspending equipment over people's heads all the time. So when we have to do repairs or anything on that gear, torque specs are extremely important to make sure that it's not going to loosen up, that everything, if you over torque something, you can break the bolt. And if it's not torqued enough, it could come loose. So having the proper torque spec can be super important. So, also anti-seize is a really good thing to have. I don't know how well you can see, but there's a little silver residue on all these lugs, and the reason for that is so that these don't get stuck on there. So a little bit of anti-seize when you're reassembling something can really help the next person, or the next time you remove that thing, to make sure it's not as hard. And especially on a vehicle, on a tire, this is something you might be doing on the side of the road, and you really don't want to be fighting something like that. So a little bit of anti-seize will go a long way. I didn't reapply anything here because there's still a good amount on here, and I rotate these about every 6,000 or 7,000 miles, which is more often than usual. But I think with the spare, I don't want I don't want there to be super uneven wear on everything, so I like to do it a little more often. Now on this side, the ball joint looks perfect. No moisture getting in there at all. And I don't think I showed you a zoomed in shot of the other one. Can we even see it anymore? There. Look how rusty that one is. What's going on? Weird. so this one now becomes our spare. So let's get the tire pressure checked on this. You got to remember, it's good to check your tire pressure every now and then when, especially when the temperature changes so often in Wisconsin. So all the tires on this truck, the factory says should be 35. However, here's something that maybe you all can advise me on. Now, a trailer tire will give you a range of pressure to fill it to, depending on how much weight you're going to put on the tire. So that leads me to believe that tires in general need to be inflated depending on how much weight you're going to put on them. So usually inside the door of any vehicle is where you can find what the factory recommends the tire pressure should be for that vehicle. And I'm guessing it is going to base that off the curb weight of the vehicle. But I've done a lot of searching online to try to answer the question, what if your curb weight goes up? In my case, I've, the lift kit added some weight. I put in a dual battery system, toolbox full of hundreds of pounds of tools, other just, supplies that I keep on hand all the time. I didn't do it, but, I toyed with an auxiliary fuel tank at some point. That would add a lot of weight. So at that point, if your stock weight goes up, should you not increase the tire pressure a little bit? I've never been able to find an answer. Maybe someone can let me know. But anyway, so I do like to err on the, a pound or two more than 35. But anyway, let's see what this one is. This one's already reading 37. Let's do it a couple of times. Also, I do like to use these analog old tire pressure gauges more than any digital electronic ones. These are just they work all the time. Don't require a battery, nothing. They're lightweight. I keep one in the visor of my truck all the time. So okay, so this is already reading 37, which it's springtime now. The temperature is going to be going up, so maybe I could let some air out, but I think we'll be fine. Because who knows? We could have a blowout tomorrow when it's in the 20s here. So I like to put a bit of pressure on this cable as I'm winding it up before it starts to take the weight of the tire, so it doesn't get bound up on the spool. Like that. Good. Okay, last thing we need to do after rotating the tires is to do a relearn on the tire pressure monitoring system. Most vehicles nowadays have a TPMS, tire pressure monitoring system, which means if a tire gets too low of pressure, it'll give you a dash light and let you know before it goes completely flat. In my wife's CRV, it's all or nothing. If one tire gets low, it'll just throw the light on, but it won't tell you which tire it is. In this truck, though, it'll tell you exactly which tire is doing that. But the sensor for that is in the tire. So once you rotate the tires, now the truck now doesn't have a reference for which tire is where. So we have to teach the truck now where each tire is. So it's kind of a neat thing on this truck. You just put the key in, turn it to on, and then so you just hold down lock and unlock until it beeps twice. There it is. So now we come out here and see only this light is on. This one is not. Okay, so that means we're going to now do a relearn of this tire. So what it's looking for is a change in pressure. So if we take this off, we're just going to let out a bunch of air. And once it sees this pressure drop, it'll beep once, and it'll move on to the next tire. This is why we didn't. There it is. Okay. So now, let's see. So now this light is lit. We're going to do this tire. Isn't this fun? So this is why we didn't check the tire pressure as we went. It would work the same if we were to increase pressure, but you're seeing how long that would take. We may just have to let the air out after that anyway, so I might as well do it this way. Good. Next. Okay, looks like that one's on. That one's not. Now we're going to do this tire. And now this light is on. Last one. After this one, it should beep twice. And we're done. The tiny little batteries in these TPMS sensors do go bad. So it may be that after time, there it is, and we're all done. After time, you will have to have those replaced. I've never done that. I've always just had a shop do it while they're changing tires or something. But anyway, that's it. Tires rotated, relearned. I'm just going to re-up the pressure on all these tires and we're done.